Hello and welcome to this first look exploring session, our continuing first look, looking at If You Know Not Me, You Know Nobody by Thomas Heywood, part 47, or otherwise known as our third session of part 2, play otherwise known as featuring the building of the Royal Exchange and also the famous victory of Queen Elizabeth. A play that turns up in the early 17th century and seems to pop around a bit for a good few decades or so, on and off. It's got a reasonably interesting publishing history. There's a lot of material. It's taking us 4 sessions to get through this part. We've already looked at a much shorter play previously, which may or may not have very much to do with this play. And I say we're only a little way, perhaps past halfway in the text, so we've still got a lot of material to sift through and lots of questions to ask about what one does with a text A, this long, and B, that is doing lots of things of which we're not necessarily quite sure what they're doing yet. So lots of adventures yet to have with If You Know Not Me. Reading today, Timothy and Leicester, having covered for me for the last couple of sessions, is
Aliki Chapple, actor and translator based in the north of England.
Reading John Ramsey, Sussex and gentleman, stepping down from having to do the technical chores, is...
Hi, I'm Eric and I'm here.
Reading Hobson and Dr. Parry.
Hi, I'm Lois in London.
See if you have a particular choice between those two parts. Reading Factor Number 1, Sheriff Lady and Lord Number 3 is...
Hi, Helen, based in Suffolk.
Reading Factor Number 2, a Sword Bearer, Dr. Nowell, and Lord Number 2 is...
Hello, I'm Lynn Freitas, zooming from my cell phone this morning in the northwestern United States.
Reading a Courtesan, a Wench, a Gresham, and Lord Number 1 is...
Hello, I'm Helen Good, historian in Hull, and the gender balance is about to improve slightly.
And finally, reading Tawny-coat, and yes, we're all shocked, the Queen is...
Rachael, actor on the East Coast.
And I'm your host, Robert Crighton. I will be reading stage directions and generally moving things in the right direction. We're going from what we're calling Scene 11. How you divide the play up is open for debate. But here we have the entrance of Tawny-coat with a spade.
Hard world, when men dig livings out of stones. As wretched, miserable I am enforced. And yet there lives more pity in the earth than in the flinty bosoms of her children. For she content to have her aged breast mangled with mattocks, rent and torn with spades, to give her children and their children bread. When man more flinty than her stony ribs, that was their mother, neither by entreats, tears, nor complaints, will yield them sustenance. But 'tis our age's fault, the mightier, tear living out of us, we out of her.
Enter Hobson in his gown and slippers.
Mother of me, what a thick mist is here. I walked abroad to take the morning's air, and I am out of knowledge. Bones of me, what meads and what enclosures have we here? How now, old Hobson, dote in thine old age? A fool at 80? Whither wilt thou, wit? I crossed the water in my gown and slippers to see my rents and buildings of the bank side, and I am slipped clean out of ken, for God, a wool gathering.
Either mine ears deceived, or I should know that tongue. 'Tis so, indeed, each word he speaks makes my torn heart to bleed.
I smile at my own foolery. Now I remember mine old grandmother would talk of fairies and hobgoblins that would lead milkmaids over hedge and ditch, make them milk their neighbors kine, and 10 to 1 this Robin Goodfellow.
And this questionable placement of a stage direction of Tawny-coat digs
hath led me up and down the madman's maze. I hear some company. For shame, all whist. Sit thee down, Hobson, the right man in the mist.
'Tis he. Alas, when the rough hand of want hath cast us down, it loads us with mishaps. I broke my day with him, oh, had that fatal hour broken my heart, and, villain that I was, never so much as write in my excuse, and he for that default hath sued my bill, and with an execution is come down to seize my household stuff, imprison me, and turn my wife and children out of doors. What, shall I fly him? No, he's pitiful. Then with my tears I will importune him. God save you, Master Hobson.
Hobson? Bones o' me, what voice is that? Art thou a man or fiend? Tell me if thou beest that will-o'-the-wisp that leadst me to this wild morass. I conjure thee to leave me to myself.
Oh, Master Hobson, as ever you have been a poor man's friend, continue still so. Insult not o'er my fortunes.
I am in the mist. What art thou? Speak.
A debtor of your worships.
A debtor of mine? Mother of me, thou liest. I know thee not, nor do I know this place. If thou owest me anything, pay me with thy love. And if thou beest acquainted in these woods, conduct me to some town or direct road that leads to London, and I'll here discharge thee of debts and duties, and beside impart somewhat to cherish thee.
What should I think? He knows me, and for fear I should escape him, he would entice me to the officers. Master Hobson, though not for mine own, yet for my wife and my poor children's sakes, if your intent be to imprison me, upon my knees I do entreat you spare me. The goods you trusted me withal, I have not wasted in riot and excess, but my kind heart, seeing my helpless neighbors in distress, by reason of the long and extreme dearth, some I relieved, some trusted with my goods, whose poverty not able to repay. Then bear with me a little, your rich store hath saved my life and fed 100 more.
Now, bones of me, another Tawny-coat. What's thy name, knave?
John Rowland, sir.
Bones of me, I thought as much. Art not thou Tawny-coat?
I am the man whom you called Tawny-coat.
And I the Hobson that will pity thee. Now, bones of me, what makest thou with a spade?
This spade, alas, 'tis all the wealth I have. When my poor wife and children cry for bread, they still must cry till these have purchased it. They must go naked till these hardened hands, when the cold breath of winter strikes on them, till these have earned it.
Now, alas, good soul, it breaks my heart to see him, to hear him, and mine eyes could weep for company. What earnest a day?
Little, God knows, though I be stirring earlier than the lark, and at my labor later than the lamb, towards my wife and children's maintenance. I scarcely earn me 3 pence by the day.
Oh, alas, the while, poor souls, I pity them. And in thy words, as in a looking glass, I see the toil and travail of the country, and quiet gain of cities' blessedness. Heaven's will for all, and should we not respect it, we are unworthy life. But bones of me, dost think to pay me £20 and keep thy charge earning a groat a day?
And God bless my labors, I hope I shall. I have this quarter by exceeding thrift, bare clothing and spare diet, scraped together fine shillings in a purse, which I lay up towards your worship's debt.
Oh, give it me somewhat, hath some favor. And yet, shall I spend that which the poor laborer got? No, God forbid. Old Hobson ne'er will eat rather than surfeit upon poor men's sweat. Take it again, and buy thy children bread. But soft, the mist doth break. What town is this?
Deptford, and like your worship.
And enter
Bones.
Timothy.
Bones of me. To Deptford came I to do charity. I see 'twas God's appointment. Oh, but who comes here? Bones of me, honest Tim. 'Twas said in London you were bound for France, and I determined to have writ by you.
By yea and nay, Master Hobson, 'tis no untruth. I was bound for France, landed in France, dispatched some secret business for a sister in France, and from her have French tokens to deliver to the sisterhood, whom I shall first encounter in England.
Bones of me, Tim, so speedy in your journey. It seems your business was of much import.
Oh, verily it was, and it stood chiefly between two women, and as you know, women love to have their business dispatched.
Mother of me, Tim, I am glad of it. But how does my factor, John Gresham, in France?
Your gravity may better consider of that than I can discourse, but withal, I pray you, pray you think he is a wild youth. There are taverns in France, yet I do not think John Gresham is given to frequent them, and yet I must remember he is a youth, and youth may be drawn to expenses. England's on this side, France on that, the seas betwixt him and his master, and I do not think him guilty. Yet I could say.
Mother of me, leave off these parables and tell me plainly, is he not a wencher?
By yea and by nay, sir, without parable. I am no telltale. I have seen him in company with Madonna such a one, or such a one. It becomes not flesh and blood to reveal. Your worship knows he is in France, the sea betwixt him and you, and what a young youth in that case is prone unto. Your gravity is wise. He is not, say so much as I saw him drinking with a French lady or lass in a tavern, because your gravity is wise. But if I had, it had been less than perhaps you imagine on such a wild youth as he no question does deserve.
Oh, mother of me, 'tis so. In a French tavern, kissing the lady, and the sea betwixt us. I am for you, Master John. Thus, in my gown and slippers and nightcap and gown, I'll slip over to France. Here, Tawny-coat, receive thou my sealed ring, bear it to my factor, bid him buy that token, sort thee out 40 pounds worth of such wares as thou shalt think most beneficial. Thou art a free man, up with thy trade again. I'll raise thee, Roland, if God say amen.
I know not how.
Bones of me, man, peace, Hobson will do it. Thou owed me but 20 pound, I'll venture 40 more. Timothy here shall be thy witness to my factor in this business. To all our friends in London, say I am gone over to France. I am for you, Master John.
And exit. So, yes, we've got some people in and out of luck, and from activities that were sort of happening earlier in the play. All sorts of interesting little business going on. Thoughts on the room? Obviously, first seen back after a break since last time and the time before. Are we up to speed? Do we know who everyone is? What's going on? Lynn?
So this Roland was Goodman or Goodfellow or something before. So we just have a continuity problem that you would need to straighten out in performance. That what is this guy's last name really?
It may not be that he has a fixed last name.
You were saying that last, yeah. So
yeah, we may have been saying that out of session. Actually, I don't know whether that came up in the actual.
Okay.
But we did have there was definitely a discussion about the nature of names, and of course using this sort of proverbial name of like Robin Goodfellow as well is this sort of catch-all element of putting this person slightly up in the air, as well as what sort of names. Part of the point here is that this is about a confusion of names. That this is how this is actually putting some people in financial difficulty, because the accounting has all gone horribly wrong. So it is quite important that we know what's going on, because otherwise we can't communicate it to an audience. Aliki.
Absolutely agreed with that, but I do think it's more of a running gag than a continuity problem. Every scene we see him in, he's described differently by what he wears or gives a different surname.
Yeah. That's interesting. Like, I wonder what that is supposed to mean, or that there's a certain effect that that's interesting.
Yeah, from a performer's thing of just coming on and he just whatever disguise he's going, it's still me. Me again.
But a lot has happened, because he discharged his 10-pound debt, sold all the trinkets, came back with the 10 pounds, finally succeeded in paying his debt, and now he's bought another 20 pounds worth of stuff, but has used the money and the goods to help out his neighbors, because financial hard times have descended on England. And Hobson decides to forgive that and loan him another 40 pounds worth of stuff to lift him up. There's a lot of forgiving of debt going on this session and last session.
Attitudes to money about what people's responsibilities, as well as obviously also trying to make money, and the relationship between heaven and earth, and it's sort of throwing into a lot of confusion as to what this player is actually trying to say, and of course different characters are doing different things, and that is a good thing, I will argue. That a clear line, but also just the sort of the nature of what Hobson is doing. Just by having him coming in his gown and slippers, I'm worried about Hobson.
Does he have dementia or what? He's wandered all the way to Deptford from London.
Yeah. Now he's going all the way to France. I don't think he's planning to change. I think he's planning to go to France dressed the way he is.
Right.
There are days when that's me, but
Oh dear. I can see me, but you're a little young for that, Rob.
Yeah. Oh no, trust me. Dressing gown and slippers every day if I could get away with it. Helen.
Hobson is impulsive.
Oh yeah.
He says, "Oh yes, I'm owed money. Oh good, here's 5 shillings." And then, hang on, if I take his 5 shillings, what about his poor kids? And so he is very, very. I think this is the keynote of him. He is impulsive, and he says what he thinks when he's in the moment.
No filter.
Yeah.
Not a great one for calculation.
Yes, I wondered about that. It seemed to me there were 2 ways of doing that. Either, as you say, of course I'll take the 5 shillings. Wait a minute. Or it could be the whole thing is a bit of a performance. Yes, I'll take your 5 shillings, but wait a minute. Should I, he might be enjoying, dramatizing the situation.
I don't think so.
Mm-hmm. But then also in the contrast of what we just the previous scene, which is obviously yesterday, where you've got this sort of what Gresham's doing, where he's talking about, what matters if all my money is gone? What matters of all these things? Not worrying for a moment about the possible death toll of the ships that have sunk, or any, there's no thinking of the people. It's much more demonstrative in a different way about money. So I'm wondering if these scenes are deliberately in parallel for those questions.
Oh yeah.
Alan, then Eric.
Yeah, I have a feeling that the name issue with Tawny-coat is a continuity problem. But we've also got a continuity issue with Timothy. Because the way he came across in the bits that we read earlier was that as almost an extreme Puritan, which may be an anachronism in terms of the terming of it. But he came across as very hardline Bible basher. The context of what he's done there is taking money within the sisterhood. Immediately conjured the image that he was effectively working with nuns, who at this time would be unlawful.
Well, we're talking foreign trade. You possibly can't avoid nuns in different countries. Aliki, then Lois. I'll come back to you,
I will
Eric.
remind the company that after being arrested by shenanigans of somebody else, of John, in fact, the guy he's been refusing to condemn while also condemning. Timothy turned out to have been spending an awful lot of time at the local brothel, and I will suggest that sisterhood refers to that instead.
And the French. Yeah, and the French tokens. I've secret business for a sister in France, and from her have French tokens to deliver to the sisterhood whom I shall first encounter in England. I mean, that's all got to be about the pox, hasn't it? I mean, the French disease.
So what we're getting with Timothy is more of a hypocritical outward persona, and this is more tokening what's going on underneath the surface, and which hopefully will have some interesting parallel plays to be dancing with in the next few weeks. Eric?
I'm trying to work out what Hobson is doing, because like at the beginning he started off as a sort of clown character, but then sort of yesterday towards like in the scene with Gresham, he was doing like side commentary of like, you know, I hope your stones are not like this or whatever, it's just an interesting sort of, obviously time has passed, so I don't know if that means something. But also kind of, no, I'm wondering if this would be worked out if we were going at pace.
Yeah, or at least you don't look at it close enough to worry too hard. There may be a slight temporal problem in the play that is trying to say, well, this kind of action would probably happen over a long period of time, but other parts of the plot might happen over a much shorter period of time. And hopefully you won't notice that dragons can fly far faster in season 7 than they ever could in any other season. Let's just not worry about that too much. So I think there are minor issues, but I think you're at pace. You just hope that nobody notices, and it's something that people pick up when they're in the car on the drive home and go, hang on, because that's fine, because we've already got their money by that point. Anyway, we've got to move on to scene 12, and we're going to discover more life. No sign of the Queen yet, as enter John and Courtesan.
Sweet youth, thou art too young and yet scarce ripe to taste the sweetness of my mellowed love.
That's the reason I set thy teeth on edge thus. But thou knowest I promised to have a bout with thee at our last parley, and I am come to perform my word. Name the weapon.
Nothing but kisses and enticing looks.
Then word your lips well, or you'll have the first of a name.
I have no word but this, my tender sex. I've not the manly skill to break a trust. Oh, how I dote on thee. I have tried, and now the sweaty Spaniard and the carousing Dane, the foggy Dutchman and the fiery French, the brisk Italian, and indeed what not. And yet of all and all, the Englishman shall go for me. The truest lovers, the ablest, last night, and the truest men that breath beneath the sun.
Why then the Englishman for thy money. God have mercy, little rogue, there's no love lost. I'll assure thee, I am my master's factor, and thou hast a commodity that I must needs take up, and not enter it into his cash book neither. Little thinks my master in England what where I deal with all here in France, but since this offended offered me the best hand, I'll venture on it, though I be a loser by the bargain.
I would to be private, lest the telltale hour whisper our love. I prithee, let us into the inner chamber. I am jaloux of all eyes but mine own to look upon thee. I would have none to see thee but myself, in amorous arms to fold thee, but myself to associate, talk, discourse, or dally with thee. Clip, grasp hands, or kiss thee, but myself.
Who would not be a merchant venturer and lay out for such a fair return? I shall venture the doubling of my years presently. I think I have met with a better commodity than matches, and my master cannot say, but he hath met with his match. This 'tis to have the land and the sea betwixt me and my master. Here I can keep my can I keep my French rebels? And none say so much as black is mine eye. Prithee, little Peaky, show me this, bestow this jewel of me.
This jewel's a love. Oh, ask my life, 'tis thine. But this, an English factor, whom you know, gave me at his departure out of Rouen, and I have vowed to keep it for his sake. Anything but this jewel.
But if I could get his jewel cleanly and carry it him over at my return for a token, 'twere a jest worth laughing at. But an thou wilt not give me this jewel, prithee give me this same chain to wear for thy sake.
This was another countryman of yours. He made me swear to keep it till his return. Ask me aught else, 'tis thine.
Why then this ring?
That you of all the favours that I wear could find out nothing. But this ring, this ring, a toy not worth the giving, yet I sooner would part with life than this. A dying friend bequeathed it at his death. But, honey love, what shouldst thou talk of giving? 'Tis a word worn out of use. It sounds not well in French. A man should still say, take to his wench.
Then I say take this and this. Still take heed of me, lest I shew you a slippery trick for this. 'Tis the kindest wench in Christendom, but she'll part with nothing. Shall we have another wooing room?
What room thou pleasest, dear art, I agree. Where I go, there shall be room for thee.
Any. Then I may chance to make with you rather my room than my company, and you look not the better to it.
And they exit. What an interesting little scene. John does not seem to understand how this game works, does he? This is not the direction of travel that these transactions are expected to go in. I mean, this courtesan is working really hard, and he's constantly saying, "Let me take some token from you," and going, "No, this is really not getting the. No, you're not getting this at all, are you?" Lois, then Lynn.
But he is a crook himself. I mean, it seems to me that he's got a lot of asides through there, saying, you know, I'll trick you if you think you're going to trick me. It's hard to say who's winning this one, really. I mean, they're two smart people. I mean, and when he says, you know, take this and this and this, I don't think he's giving her money, though he could be. He could also just be giving her kisses, you know. But
you know that she doesn't seem to be taking any money from him at it, which by the nature of the speech prefix, I'm assuming that's the system, but maybe we're missing something here. Lynn.
Actually, I think you could play this, that he knows exactly how the game is played. He knows he's not supposed to be taking from a courtesan, that he's supposed to be giving her gifts, but he's teasing her. He's giving her a hard time. He knows that she's going to say no, and make an excuse for not giving him all the things he asks for. But he's playing her.
Or trying to, yeah. And you know, because you know the speech the courtesan has about, you know, all the men, you know, that I've met, then none of them are like you, and I'm I'm experienced internationally. It's a fascinating little scene.
You don't believe a word she says?
No, of course not.
Not one word.
This is all patter. They call it sex work for a reason. Eric.
I was going to say, it's interesting how it starts off a bit like the whole Horatio Imperia dialogue in Spanish tragedy, where it's like all like war imagery, and then it shifts into this whole talk of money and merchants and stuff. It's sort of interesting.
Lois.
Yeah, and when John says, "Why then the Englishman for thy money?" I mean, there was already a play called "Englishmen for My Money." it's a kind of proverb, it just means that, they're the ones I would bet on, I guess, they're bound to be the winners. But here he's saying, the Englishman for thy money, at least assuming this isn't a misprint. And she's just been flattering him anyway, or flattering the English. I think he knows what's going on here. I mean, I think it's quite a funny scene, precisely because it's not the standard clever courtesan deceiving a naive man. It's really man trying to cheat woman who is trying to cheat him.
Other thoughts? Otherwise, we'll move on because it effectively moves into more action in the next scene. But so briefly, Eric.
I just like the whole stories that the cock and bull stories that she's spinning, sort of yes, and this ring, oh no, this ring is so valuable, and just and the other thing is there was a present from someone else of your of your I don't know, country or whatever. It's just fun.
Yeah. Everything has a wonderful backstory that means I can definitely not hand you over this extremely valuable thing. Lois.
Yeah, just the John's last line in that scene too. That's an aside, I'm sure. Then I may chance to make you, I think it's probably wish rather my room than my company. In other words, you're going to end up wishing that I weren't here. I think is what it means. I would rather have your room than your company. It means, get the hell out of here. I don't like your company.
Anyway, the scene effectively continues as we go into scene 13 with a slight dancing around before we return to John and the courtesan, as we have enter at the other end of the stage Hobson in his gown and slippers.
I have slipped o'er into France, and in my slippers given all my friends the slip to see this gallant. My man, he that hath matched me. Bones of me, the knave's a prophet, else it could not be. He's not at his lodging, yet by an English factor, fellow knows not me, I was directed unto this house. I don't know what business the knave has here.
Yes. There he knocks and enter a entirely different employee, presumably a wench at some establishment.
Who's there? Who's at door?
Damsel, good day. Is there not a fellow here, an Englishman?
Well, he's an Englishman, but none of your fellows neither. I hope, sir, we're not all fellows at football.
Nay, bones of me, girl, there's no reason we should be fellows. But prithee, my wench, is there not one Jack Gresham here?
No goodman look like a goose, but there's one Master John Gresham, an English gentleman here, and you know no manners, you should be taught some.
Bones of me, goodman, master, servant. Old goodman Hobson keeps gentleman to his men. Jack turned to Master John, marry, some reverence. The French maid taught me manners. Well, I hope we shall have a sight of the gentleman.
As you use yourself, you may and you may not.
And they leave, and we have the return of John and the courtesan with sudden voice changes.
Thou seest this jewel well becomes mine ear, this ring my finger, and this chain mine arm.
I'll be thy jewel, at thy lips I'll hang, and as this ring thy finger compasseth, so shall these arms thy waist. These are but toys, let me displace them.
And the wench enters.
Master John, here's a fella below, would speak with you.
With me? What is he?
A simple coxcomb. He call him up to you.
Do, my sweet Bussamac. Some carrier or base knave that hangs of my liberality. I hope 'tis not pure Tim come for the second part of my benevolence. Admit him in, that he may praise our fate, and see us in our choicest pomp and rate.
Here's fellow I told you of, sir.
And enter Hobson.
Zounds, my master.
Sante, amen. Man John, a wenchert knave, rack and manger knave. Bones of me, cannot a snatching away serve your turn, but you must lie at rack and manger? Is this the ware you deal with, servant John?
Chapman's ware, sir.
Sirrah, the dealing with such ware belongs not to our trade. Bones of me, knave, apprentice must not occupy for himself, but for his master, to any purpose.
And he cannot occupy for his master without the consent of his mistress.
Come, you are a knave.
Of your own bringing up, sir.
Besides, thou canst not keep open shop here, because thou art a foreigner by the laws of the realm.
Not within liberty, but I hope the suburbs tolerates any man or woman to occupy for themselves. They may do it in the city too, and they'd be naturalized at once.
Aye, but sirrah, I'll have none of my English prentices Frenchified. Bones of me, knave, I'll have thee deal with no such broken commodities.
Your worship must have such as the country yields, or none at all. But I pray, sir, what's our trade?
What sayest thou, knave?
That your worship is a haberdasher of all wares.
Bones of me, a haberdasher of small wares.
And that the worst trade in all Christendom, and especially for French women. They know it, a man to be a haberdasher of small ware, they'll have no dealing with him, and therefore you will have good commodities here. You must change with copy. You were never a traveler, and therefore you know not what belongs to it. But you do clean mistake this gentlewoman, and you take her for a light wench. Weigh her in equal balance, and you shall find her no such woman, I'll assure you.
No? What is she then, John?
For God, sir, I would not have you wrong the gentlewoman's repute for a world. This maîtresse deals for herself, and hath many sorts of ware at command. I was now bargaining with her about a certain country commodity, and had not your coming marred the match, we had gone through for it. And further, should you wrong the lady's reputation here in France, I'll assure you they have the law of their sides. But to confirm your good opinion of her, this is she of whom I took up your commodity of matches. Be sorry for your offence, and excuse you to her for shame, master.
Bones of me, knave, I cannot speak a word of French.
Nor is she of English, but all's one, upon her master. And what, you cannot do in words, perform in dumb signs. What, in your slippers, come to take me napping? I'll give you what you come for instantly, and on the sudden make you so aghast you will be glad to pardon what is past.
And exit John, but I'm going to pause before we attempt to have this conversation in semi-dumb show and the rest of the scene. Yes, so John is visited by the last person he wanted to see, and Hobson has appeared down and slippered. How are we feeling about Hobson now? How's Hobson?
Well, he made it to France.
Yeah, he shouldn't come there without knowing some French. He's going to be sorry, I think. But I mean, it certainly looks John is setting him up. I don't know what's going to happen, but probably nothing good.
Yeah, Eric.
I did enjoy the line, I'll not have apprentice of mine be Frenchified. No, it was just yeah.
Yeah. So
I think country commodity needs glossing.
No.
Or maybe we don't need to gloss it, but just point out the line. Alan.
Yeah, I mean, it almost looks like John's taken over the role that Tawny-coat was doing in yesterday's session of being the low comic. Because the amount of these sequence we've just done could be played to the groundlings to get dirty laughs.
Well, well, just in terms of the level of comedy, I mean, he is setting it. He's setting, or he's trying to, wrangle his best position in a scene. That's not to say it's not funny, but I don't know if it's low comedy in that way.
Yeah. No, and he's quite different from Tawny-coat. I mean, Tawny-coat maybe funny, but he's actually sort of pathetic. And he's obviously the good, solid lower class Englishman that we're used to in quite a few plays, especially by Heywood. Whereas John is the clever rascal, really.
He's constantly maneuvering. He's constantly trying to put himself in the best position. And, Hobson is not a match for him in a way that perhaps the Courtesan is here. We don't know who's going to win out in that particular battle of wits yet. Eric?
Yeah, I was just thinking that, he's used to talking his way out of situations, especially with, his uncle and stuff. So I'm guessing that he can talk his way out of this one.
Yeah, I mean, he's basically taken one look at Hobson and gone, "You're in your slippers and you've come to take me napping." I don't think so. And again, the question of where asides are living here are quite important. There's quite a few of these are asides rather than stuff that's actually delivered directly to Hobson, and a bit to a degree from Hobson as well. He's obviously not happy with the scene he's seeing here, even if he's not the best person to sort it out. Helen?
It's an interesting point about the problem of factors, whether you have a factor of the nationality of the country you're dealing with, in which case you haven't got much control over them, or else you send your own person, your own national, as a factor for you, but they are then very limited because they're not a national. So he can't work within the liberties of the town. He has to work in the suburbs. Not that it matters much for a Hobson, because the man's obviously not cut out to be a factor.
Anyway, we've had a setup for a scene. Let's see whether this scene plays out as well as it could. You cannot do in words, perform in dumb shows. So let's see, with the exit of John, what happens with Hobson and the Courtesan?
Madam, I cry you mercy for this wrong done to your ladyship. I did suspect you for a bad liver, but I see you clear, for which mistake I do remain your servant.
Merci, monsieur.
How? Would you my grey mare see? And like your ladyship, I came by water, and neither on mare's back nor horseback.
No? Non pas français?
No, indeed, lady. My name is not Francis. Your servant and John Hobson.
Non point.
No points. Yes, indeed, lady. I have points at my hose, though I go on trust.
Non pas là.
I have no points in my parlor, indeed, but I have £100 worth in my shop.
Enter John with some other factors.
Tush, fear not, lads, for he knows none of you. Do but buff out a little broken French, and he'll never take you to be Englishmen.
We'll second the other, but manage it.
Be patient, I beseech you, gentlemen, though you be officers appointed here to search suspected places, as is a most notorious filthy bawdy house, and carry old rusty fornicators above the age of 50 into prison. This is an honest gentleman.
A search, and this a bawdy house? Why, John, bones of me, knave, how comes this to pass?
Is man of mine?
How, must you have money of me? I'll know wherefore first, by your leave.
Nay, master, I would it were but a money matter. A cage or whipping post or so, 'tis worse. What if an old man chide his prentice hence, as if he had some private business, and then himself get close unto his wench? Nay, whipping's all too good. Had you found me so, there had been work enough. There had been news for England, and a whole 12 months chiding of my good uncle.
Je vous fais fort amute.
How? Must I go to prison for doing amiss?
To prison, nay, to whipping. I'm sorry, and to my power I will entreat for you. Fie, master, fie.
Bones of me, John, is not this a lady?
No, by my troth, master, such as be in the garden now, is Jones as good as this French lady?
Ah, is not this gentlewoman a dealer, and hath she not a good commodity?
Yes, by my faith, sir, I confess both.
Hath she not where?
She hath, and at a reasonable reckoning.
And may not then a chaplain deal with her?
Marry, may you, sir, and I'll send news to your wife of your dealing. The cause of your coming to France shall be known, and what second-hand commodities you took up since your coming. My mistress in England shall know what utterance you have for your small wares in France, pen and ink. I'll set it down in black and white.
Bones of me, John! What, John? Why, honest John!
Hearty commendations. Understand, Reverend Master Hobson found with a whore in Rowan. A place, common bawdy house, must be whipped.
No more, good John.
You have had none yet, whipped about the town.
Sweet, honest John, my bones of me, knave John.
In witness thereof, all these honest gentlemen, eyewitnesses have set to their hands. Nay, my mistress shall know it, that's flat. Are there not wenches enow in England, but you must walk over sea in your slippers and venture, being not shod, to come into France a wenching? What you, an old man too, she shall know what a slippery trick you would have served her in your slippers in France.
Nay, bones of me, John, friends, sweet John, all friends. I do confess thou hast o'erreached thy master. Ca me, ca thee. Conceal this from my wife, and I'll keep all thy knavery from thine uncle.
Well, sir, in hope of amendment, I'm content, and yet...
Nay, bones of me, I'll take you at your word. Besides, I hope these honest gentlemen will save my credit.
I'll entreat for you.
'Tis logic to me, sir. I understand you not.
Marry, sir, they say if you will walk with them to their lodgings, for my sake they invite you to dinner.
God a mercy, gentlemen. God a mercy, John. But bones of me, knave, where are their lodgings?
Hard by, for why do you ask?
I hope they'll bring me to no more bawdy houses. I would not be taken napping again for 2 and 1. But gentlemen, I'll accept of your courtesy, and then...
You shall with me to England. We'll show France our backs, and you will needs deal with it for yourself before your time. You shall do it in England. Will you walk, gentlemen?
Adieu, monsieur, and Gresham. Farewell to no more of French love. No more French loss shall do.
Excellent. Oh, wow, there's a lot going on here. I'm thinking with the Hobson dumb show bit at the beginning, it does feel like that from what Hobson is saying and describing here, that when he gets to hose, that he might be putting himself in a slightly awkward descriptive posture for when suddenly the room is full of all these people who are speaking fake French. There's lots of room here for extempore French in addition to what's here. There's a couple of points where he's going, I do not understand you. So and when he's sort of, so it's like, you've got people just going, and etc. And yeah, he's being blackmailed. Poor Hobson. He's just being blackmailed in this really overt way. And it's just, wow.
I think it's awful. I mean, I don't know why all these people put up with John. I mean, he's terrible.
Well, presumably they're going to be creaming some cash off the top. I mean, you know, that's the way blackmail works. I'm sure there's some money is changing hands here as well as everything else. Yeah. Rachael, you were waving earlier. No, you weren't. Okay. Eric is, however, live.
Yeah, the bit with Hobson and the courtesan when they're left alone. Obviously, she's making fun of him, but he's basically going, "Do you understand any English?" That's kind of the impression I get, and also because he can't hear properly, or at least that's what's suggested. Maybe it's also just John doing the sides, sort of like with his hand covering his mouth, so people can't see what he's, so Hobson can't I don't know. It's just interesting, sort of all the games on words. It plays on words as well as games going on in the room.
Yeah, there's so much comic business that is potentially added onto this in terms of what's visually happening all over the place, as well as sort of the nonsense that the fake Frenchmen are doing, because they're all, they're all these factors. They're not factors. They're just some guys. His drinking mates or something. And yeah, it's a terrible con. Alan.
I think actually they could be factors, because they could be the other slightly dodgy English traders in the same town. You know, and they're all damn rogues.
Helen, you're muted at the moment.
If they're not rogues, they're up for a practical joke.
So yeah, poor Hobson.
Poor Hobson. I'm not sure how he got to be a successful small businessman. Because he seems awfully easily manipulated and naive, if not outright stupid.
Yeah, I mean, how old is he? Did he have a family who perhaps supported him more in an earlier stage in his life, and now he's alone or something like that?
He's got a wife. I mean, he said that, my wife.
Yeah.
And he's 60, I think. He said so in the earlier scene. Yeah, 60 is old in this period. Yeah.
And I mean, if you... Well bought is half sold. So if he's been buying small wares and he's been staying, although John may have big ideas about commodities, he's interested in he's got a niche market. He buys in bulk and sells to peddlers. And by doing it honestly and steadily all his life, he's amassed enough to buy property on near Bankside from which he's getting rents. It's substantial.
Yeah. Rachael.
He told us yesterday. I mean, he kind of got lucky in that he bought all the rosary beads, and he had a monopoly on rosary beads because he bought them during Protestantism, and then Queen Mary came and he sold them all. So he took a huge risk. That was a super big gamble, and I don't know. Then he's been working off of that, but just that's how he got rich is so ridiculous, because that's so easy to bust on, to blow all your money on.
I'm fascinated thinking about the Reformation as a way to short the market. I think that's a fascinating idea.
Massive fortunes, mostly out of the Court of Augmentation. If you were a doorkeeper in the Court of Augmentations, your children became millionaires. But no, there were vast commercial opportunities if you were on the right side at the right time.
Yeah. Any
or
more?
Called Cecil.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I mean, ultimately, yes. You can make a lot of money if you know who an incoming power structure is going to be, and you can lose a lot if you gamble and get it wrong, because it's all about influence. But yeah, just all sorts of interesting things. Right, Eric.
I do like how John kind of manages to tell him only half the truth. He does tell him that this is a bawdy house and her commodities are very good. But I mean, sort of, he doesn't say like, oh, this is what I've been doing. He kind of just goes, yeah, you'll be arrested because you're above 50.
Okay, we're going to go on to scene 14, and let's see what happens here. We have the entrance of Sir Thomas Ramsey being mayor, a sheriff, sword bearer, etc. A lot of people doing civic-y things.
Well said, my masters. See all things be ready to give her majesty such entertainment as may grace London, and become the state her highness brings along. Where's the queen now?
She comes along the Strand from Somerset House, through Temple Bar, down Fleet Street and the Cheap, the north side of the Burst to Bishopgate. and dines with Master Gresham, and appoints to return on the south side through Cornhill. And there, when she hath viewed the rooms above and walks below, she'll give name to Burse.
The streets are fit, and all the companies placed in their liveries against her return. But my Lord Mayor, shall these ambassadors this day have audience?
Admittance, if not audience, was granted. See therefore trumpets and all kinds of music be placed against her royal interview. The steps with arras spread where she ascends. Besides, give charge unto the shopkeepers to make their best shows in the upper rooms, because the Queen intends to compass it.
'Tis done, my lord.
Trumpets are far off.
The Queen hath dined. The trumpets sound already and give note of her coming. Bid the waits and hautboys to be ready at an instant.
Enter at one door the Queen! Leicester, Sussex, Lords, Gresham at the other, with Casimir, the French Florentine ambassadors, Sir Thomas Ramsey, etc. It's all busy, lots of people on stage.
Leicester and Sussex, are those the ambassadors?
They are, dread sovereign. He that foremost stands, the emperor's. The second is the French, the last is the Florentine.
We will receive them.
Here the Queen entertains the ambassadors, and in their several languages confers with them. Maybe more additional inferred dialogue to add here. Aren't we having fun with adding the translated dialogue to things at the moment? Sussex and Leicester place the ambassadors.
We at our court of Greenwich will dilate farther of these designs. Where's Gresham?
Your humble servant, subject and servant.
Our leisure now serves to survey your burse. A goodly frame, a rare proportion. This city or great chamber cannot show us, to add unto our fame a monument of greater beauty. Leicester, what sayest thou?
That I, my sovereign, have not seen the like.
Sussex, nor you?
Mom, not I. This Gresham work of stone will live to him when I am dead and gone.
Enter Hobson.
God bless thy grace, Queen Bess.
Friend, what art thou?
Knowest thou not me, Queen? Altogether now, then thou knowest nobody. Bones of me, Queen. I am Hobson, and old Hobson. By the stocks, I'm sure you know me.
What is he, Leicester? Dost thou know this fellow, Gresham or you?
It please your majesty, he is a rich, substantial citizen.
Bones of me, woman. Send to borrow money of one you do not know. Now there's a new trick. Your grace sent to me by a pursuivant and by privy seal to lend your highness £100. I, hearing that my queen had need of money, and thinking you had known me, would needs upon the bearer force 200. The queen should have had 3 rather than fail. I, by this hand, Queen Bess, I am old Hobson, a haberdasher, and dwelling by the stocks. When thou seest money with thy grace's scant, for twice £500 thou shalt not want.
Upon my bond.
No, no, my sovereign, I'll take thine own word, without scrip or scroll.
Thanks, honest Hobson. As I am true maid, I'll see myself the money back repaid. Thou without grudging lend'st, thy purse is free, honest as plain.
A true well-meaning man, I warrant him.
Your majesty promised to give the name to my new burse.
Gresham we will, a herald and a trumpet.
A herald and a trumpet!
Proclaim through every high street of this city, this place to be no more called a burse, but since the building's stately, fair, and strange, be it forever called the Royal Exchange. And whilst this voice flies through the city forthright, Arise, Sir Thomas Gresham, now a knight. Be our ambassadors conducted all unto their several lodgings this 23rd of January, 1570. Elizabeth christens this famous work. Now to our court of Greenwich, Gresham, thanks for our good cheer. We to our people, they to us are dear.
And exit. And oh god, so many things. It's like the Queen turns up, there's ambassadors, Gresham is going, you're going to do the naming ceremony, perhaps, a bottle of champagne on the side of the prow or whatever of his new building. And then Hobson turns up. He turns up, he announces the title of the play really loudly, and then does this WTF speech of what I'm really, really worried about Hobson. I love him, but what's going on? Aliki, then Helen.
Okay, so this was in the first session. We had a messenger come to Hobson over what Helen told us was called a forced loan. Mm-hmm. So the Queen was asking everybody to give the royal purse, £100, and he said, "Oh, the poor Queen! Gosh, she's in need of money. Have £200." Yeah. He's being perfectly consistent with what he did before.
Mm. But yeah, I'm just worrying about the overall pathology rather than a progression. Helen.
Yes, I mean more or less what Aliki said, but I mean the amicable grant, forced loan, privy seal loan, call it what you like. There was a sort of quota, and it was divided up among those able to pay. Most of these loans were in fact repaid. One or two weren't. But it's a bit like getting a tax demand and assuming that the Queen has sent it personally because she knows you. Yeah. So she, the government or the Prime Minister, gosh, the Chancellor of the Exchequer wants me to give him some money. Oh, well, of course I will. Do you know, I didn't know he knew who I was. I mean, this is more or less where we are. And the fact is, he will give masses. He is so patriotic. He is so keen on the Queen, especially now she knows who he is. I mean, within the Hobson world, there is total logic here. There's nothing irrational about it. He's just misunderstood the nature of a Privy Seal loan.
Yeah. There's also an interesting structural question about it, because it does feel slightly odd the way that Hobson's sort of bobbing about and flying around, which clues to which there will be later on about what's going on here. But yeah, there's really interesting choices going on here. This feels like it's almost a massive callback. It's like that joke you seed at the very beginning of the play that you're gonna this is when the payoff comes, in the production. Lynn, then Eric, then Alan.
And the Queen, you have to give her credit, doesn't bat an eye. She's like, she's kind of like, oh, that Hobson, basically. And thank you for the loan. I'm going to make sure, I will personally make sure that your money is paid back. She doesn't tip her hand. It's like, okay, she just goes with it. That's because that's part of the Elizabeth myth as well, is that she had the common touch that she could relate to ordinary citizens. And she calls them friends. And it's like, okay, well, don't you worry, you'll get your money back. Now, on to our business of naming this new structure.
No, I think it's even worse than that, this as awkward social situation of Gresham sort of having to go, could we name my building now?
Right. Yeah. We have something to do here. Burris, who wants to gloss that for us? BURSE. What means that?
Well, it's like the French bourse. It's the stock exchange or the commodity exchange.
So now it's being called the Royal. Like, you know, it's that thing of it's getting its official royal warrant or
Like the
whatever.
Royal National Theatre and so on. Yeah.
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 And wasn't everyone pleased about that?
That was a bad move.
It was
I noticed they never use it.
No, it got very. It was always sort of dropped from the moment it happened. There was an awful lot of opposition within the building for its politics. It's a fascinating story. Anyway, very. We're going on a tangent. Eric and then Alan.
I was gonna say that it's interesting that you've got two scenes of Hobson being sort of, well, I don't know, daft back to back. It just seems a bit like, you know, like one of them has been shoehorned in. I don't know if that's just me, like, because normally, at least in a structural sense, you would have more space between substances, and also because, you know, if he doesn't have time to get changed, he's gonna turn up in gown and slippers.
Well, I wouldn't put it past him. There's no stage direction telling us that. We've got a lot of pageantry, to be fair. There's a lot of people processing and music playing. So actually, Hobson has got more time than you'd think. I think there is a really interesting question structurally about what's going on with all of the threads that this play is weaving with. But we may not really get to answer that till tomorrow. Alan, then Rachael.
Yeah, I was just thinking, actually, in the middle of the sequence when Hobson had centre stage and Gresham makes the comment about renaming, I think that should be paid that Gresham is incredibly miffed that he's been upstaged.
Yeah. Oh,
you know,
absolutely.
because effectively Gresham has put this on, has paid a large sum of money for it, but basically he's expecting to get all the kudos out of it. And for somebody else to take the limelight, it's not in his game plan.
Yeah, and especially as Gresham has put out a lot of cash. A lot of cash.
But nobody dislikes Hobson.
No.
He's impossible to dislike, the man.
If someone who comes on and dresses the Queen as Queen Bess to her face, I mean, my
woman.
God.
And he called her woman at one point.
And she doesn't call him on it. She's like, "Oh, okay," you know.
Yeah, I've met your kind before. Let's just move on. It'll be fine. Rachael, then Lois.
No, I was going to talk about the dynamics that they have, all these people have with the Queen. You know, when we have other monarchs in scenes, for you know, and they're asking something of them or they're dealing with them, even with, you know, dealing with matters of more gravity, they don't seem as, you know, nervous or high energy, like as just to have her show up for this, you know, ribbon cutting.
Yeah, it feels weirdly low key,
like,
doesn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, I'm lagging.
It's just a tad.
I'll put it in the chat. Somebody else could say it.
Okie dokie.
They'll bring it up there.
Lois, then Aliki.
Yeah, well, I'm just going to say, I wonder who is playing Hobson. I mean, that must have something to do with it. Could it be the author by any chance? I mean, it's a sort of part I think that Heywood played.
Who knows? Lovely thought. Aliki.
I guess my point is similar, which is, you know, we talked a bit about status at the beginning and Hobson's bluff sort of mildly sweary attitude, which is the same to everybody. We've just seen he talks to the Queen just the way he talks to Tawny-coat. That will be really nice to play with in a modern production, kind of get somebody with a really solid London accent going, yeah, hello, how'd you do, old Queen? I mean, I can't do the accent, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, and you know the scene's got these. It's actually a bit like we were saying about Edward IV. You know, every so often there's a sense that something is happening off stage, that history's happening somewhere, and you know, and so these just little bits where there's some ambassadors, there's some ambassadoring things going on. That's probably not important to anything happening in the play, but you know, just a hint that there's some other stuff going on, but she's still doing ribbon cutting. Helen, were you going to leap in with something?
don't think so. I mean, I see Hobson more as his descendants were shipped out to Australia. It's an Australian attitude, which came from London.
Anyway, we will, Eric. Then we will move on.
Yeah, I was gonna say that it's kind of like the equivalent of I think it's Edward IV, but it might not be, of the Tanner scene where, like, you know, he's sort of complaining about the king, like sort of wary about what he's going to say to this random stranger. I don't know if you're with the king, but hey, yeah.
Okay, we're going to go to scene 15 and enter Dr. Nowell and Lady Ramsey.
What think you of my husband, Master Dean?
As of all men, we are mortal, made of clay, now healthful, now crafty, now sick, now well, now live, now dead, and then to heaven or to hell.
It cheers my heart now in his deep of sickness. He is so charitable, so well addicted unto the poor's relief.
It joys me, too. Great is the number of the rich in show about the city, but of the charitable there are but few.
Amongst these, I hold old Hobson well deserves to be ranked equal with the bountifulest. He hath raised many falling, but especially one Master Roland, once called Tawny-coat, but now an able citizen, late chosen a master of the hospital.
I know him well, a good, sufficient man, and since he purchased his freedom in the city, God hath blessed his travail with increase.
I have known old Hobson sit with his neighbour Gunter, good man, in Christchurch, morn by morn, to watch poor couples that come there to be married, and to be their common fathers, and give them in the church, and some few angels for a dower to boot. Besides, they too are called the common gossips, to witness at the font for poor men's children. None they refuse that on their help do call, and to speak truth, they're bountiful to all.
Enter Hobson.
Good morrow, Master Doctor. My good lady. Bones o' me, woman, thou looks sad today. Thou hast not drunk a cup of sack this morning.
We have been dealing of our charity this morning to poor soldiers such as want.
God's blessing of your heart. Need must be fed. Let us that have it give the hungry bread.
Enter Roland or Tawny-coat, depending on which name you want to go for.
Where's Master Hobson?
My new elected master of the hospital. What hasty news with you?
Oh, sir, the love I bear you makes me chary of your good name. Your credit's dear to me. You never were condemned for anything since I had first acquaintance with your name, as now you are. You have done a deed this day that hath from you ta'en all the good thoughts away.
Where? Bones o' me. Why? Speak, why?
This day you have pursued the law severely against one Timothy that stole from you £100, and he's condemned for it, and this day he must die.
Bones, man, 'tis not so.
He is by this halfway to Tyburn gone. The suit was followed in John Gresham's name. How can you then avow you know it not?
A horse, cart, coat, cart horse, malt horse, anything to save the knave's life. I protest, I swear, this was the first time that I heard the knave hath been in any trouble. Bones o' meat was done without my knowledge.
Young Gresham in his name pursued his life.
They are knaves both. A horse, £100,000 cannot make a man. 100 shall not hang one by my means. Men are more worth than money, Master Roland. Come, help me to a horse. The next I meet, to save the knave's life, gallops through the street.
Exeunt Hobson and Tawny-coat.
Men are more worth than money, he says true. 'Tis said by many, but maintained by few.
He's plain and honest. How many great professors live in this populous city that make show of greater zeal, yet will not pay so dear for a transgressor's life? but few are found to save a man would lose £100.
Enter Tawny-coat.
So suddenly returned.
He rid too fast for me. He hath been at buffets with a poor collier, and upon his horse is without saddle, bridle, boots, or spurs, galloped towards St. Giles.
They will take him for a madman.
All's one to him. He does not stand on bravery, so he may do men good. Good deeds excel, and though but homely done, may be done well.
Heaven prosper his intent. Now, Master Doctor and Master Roland, let me crave your companies to see my crazy husband, who hath made you one of his executors, and would use your pains in these extremes of sickness.
I am pleased. I'll give him physic for a soul disease.
Excellent. So once again, Hobson flies in and off stage with a escapes to save the day, and everyone think he looks a little bit mad.
Stolen somebody else's horse, yeah.
Yeah, poor collier's horse. But a lovely offstage image that you get painted, and it just I want sound effects while Nowell and Lady are left on stage just going, what's going on? And yeah, just once again, Hobson gets to do fun stuff. We get a little follow-up from earlier with Tawny-coat. We get this slightly confusing thing with Timothy going on, in the sense of it's a plot line that felt like it had been resolved, but then it's bobbed up again in ways that are slightly awkward. But I don't know if what thoughts in the room. Rachael was waving earlier. I don't know if she wanted to come in. Otherwise, then Aliki and Helen.
Just £100,000 cannot make a man 100 shall not hang one by my means. That's just such a great line. Those are just such great lines to say as an actor, to get to do that.
Yeah. Aliki.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure what's going on with that business with Timothy either. If it is the same Timothy who gave him the message about John whoring around in France, it seems structurally very odd.
Yeah, because he was just in France.
Yeah.
Timothy was in France. So
I'll go to Helen and then Lois, then Alan.
Yeah, I thought I'd solved this Timothy problem, but now I realise I really, really haven't.
No, I think it is genuinely inconsistent. I think there is something to tidy up here. Either something got added or tweaked and they just sort of went with it, or something. But there is it's sort of half lampshaded by their sort of saying, oh, well, it was forgotten about, but then someone pushed it through. So it's like something that got lost in proceedings and then somebody noticed, and some job's worth has made it happen again. And it's sort of just, it's a bit untidy. Lois, then Alan.
Yeah, it's hard to believe that John, as we've seen him, would be so horrible as to actually get somebody executed or hanged for this, but he might. I think he's probably playing another trick of some sort, trying to get money out of Hobson, probably.
Alan.
I think that Timothy has had an association with John Gresham over a period of time. He probably knows where the bodies are buried, either literally or metaphorically. And he is being used by John Gresham each time the heat goes on young John. Timothy is a convenient person to stick in the frame for whatever he can get away with. And to take the heat off himself.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's lots of headcanon we can sort of apply to this. It's just whether the play is really making this plot clear. I think we can find ways to make it make sense, but it doesn't sort of jump at you as making sense in a way that other sort of slight problems happen so quickly you don't notice. This one sort of just comes careering out at you, and you sort of go, hang on. And going hang on in the moment is always a bit of an issue. Aliki, then Rachael, then Eric.
Just very quickly, the only way I can see it working headcanon-wise is if he's angry at Timothy for betraying him to Hobson. So then John brings it up again. But yeah, we'd have to tweak it to make that work.
Rachael.
I was wondering if this scene maybe was meant to come before, because we were talking about how Hobson had gone all the way to France in his, robe or whatever, and hadn't changed or something into clothes, that this would make more sense if it came before, especially because Timothy, I think, originally was on the hook for that, and it wouldn't be like it got, or am I confusing that?
Yeah, well, the problem is that the early part of the scene is indicating a wider time gap than that allows for. That's the problem, is the scene is trying to sort of conflate and expand at the same time. So because the thing with Tawny-coat is Tawny-coat, has improved over time. Yeah. And otherwise we don't have time for Tawny-coat to do that. So it's sort of like there are two plot threads that don't quite temporally fit together. And I don't know if there is a solution. Eric, then Helen, then we will need to move on.
I was going to say that Hobson is becoming more and more like sort of a Don Quixote character, almost like sort of, you can half expect him to get like a trash can lid or something, and a ruler to sort of get ready to hit people with. But I don't know, he's very layered and interesting character, sort of like wanting to do good to a fault, which is quite tragic.
Yeah, I want to see him not riding off on a horse, but he's just next somebody's sit-on mower or something. He just comes by to try and save the day. Helen.
Yeah, there's slightly even more complications to this, actually, because the original £100 was Gresham's, and John Gresham was acting as nephew to Gresham in the first thing. But because he's now Hobson's servant, his factor, Hobson is taking on him the responsibility for Gresham's actions, even though he was acting on behalf of Uncle Gresham. I mean, the whole thing is a mess, but I think properly handled in performance, one could whiz over it, because the important thing is that Hobson is on the collier's horse, is galloping down St. Giles, which is highly unlikely in itself. And this is a heroic moment.
Yeah, I said we were going to move on, but there was another thing I just wanted to bring up as well when he's talking about old Hobson, sit with his neighbour Gunther, a good man, in Christchurch, morn by morn, to watch poor couples that come there to be married, and to be their common fathers. So it's for people who without parents or without means, who are having a much simpler ceremony and giving as a sort of this simple charitable service. Lois.
Yes, I was noticing that too, and that bit about being common gossips. I mean, gossips were people who acted as witnesses and at christenings. I mean, it's not the modern meaning of gossip at all. And the idea, that people might come with their baby and nobody else to be witnesses, and then so these nice people would be sitting there and say, "Okay, I'll do it." Yeah.
And giving them a small amount of money.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's small charity rather than big charity,
I'm increasingly wondering whether Hobson and Gunther don't have some basis in reality.
Yeah, I think this is probably the legend about them that Heywood is reading somewhere. Yeah.
It doesn't feel like they're made up. It feels because it feels improbable enough to be true.
Yeah. Yeah, could be in John Stowe. I don't know, somebody that was writing history of London.
This is going to be good fodder for second looks, I feel, and editorial questions that we need to make about what we do with a text that is doing so many things. Okay, we have scene 16, and it's a bit of a lord fest. There's a lot of lords. Enter 3 lords.
You are an early riser, good my lord.
The blood of youth that traffics in the court must not be sluggish. Your kind remembrance.
My very good lord, we that are stars that wait upon the train of such as Cynthia's under which we live must not be tardy.
You have said true. We are starters in 1 hour, and our attendance is to wait on such a queen whose virtue all the world. Ooh, but to leave that which every tongue is glad to commune with. Since Monsieur's first arrival in the land, The time that he was here and the time since, what royalty hath been in England's court, both princely revelling and warlike sport.
Such sports do fitly fit our nation, that foreign eyes beholding what we are, may rather seek our peace than wish our war.
Heaven bless our sovereign from her foes' intent. The peace we have is by her government.
Enter Dr. Parry.
Master Dr. Parry.
Good morrow, Master Doctor.
You are an early riser, sir.
My lord, my very good lord.
This summer morning makes us covetous to take the profit of the pleasant air.
It is healthful to be stirring in a morning.
It hath pleased the Queen to show him many favours.
You say but right, and since his last disgrace, the cause so great it had surely touched his life. Had not the Queen been gracious, he seems at court a man more gracious in our sovereign's eye than the greater subjects.
She hath given him much preferment, in greatest grace, in greatest place graced him with conference, asked for him in his absence, and indeed made known to us he is in her regard.
But did you never hear the cause of his disgrace?
He did intend the murder of a gentleman, one Master Hare, here in the inner temple, and so far brought his purpose to effect that Master Hare, being private in his chamber, he watching as he thought fit time, broke in upon him. But he, assaulted so, behaved himself, that did guard himself and attached him, from whence he was committed unto Newgate, and at the sessions by 12 honest men found guilty of burglary and condemned to die, and had died had her grace not pardoned him.
She is a gracious princess unto all. Many she raiseth, wishes none should fall.
Fie, Master Doctor, your face bears not the habit it was wont, and your discourse is altered. What's the matter?
And if my brow be sad or my face pale, they do belie my heart, for I am merry.
Men being as you are, so great in grace, with such a royal princess, have no reason.
Enter a gentleman.
Room for my lord, high steward.
And enter the Earl of Leicester. All the lords flock after him and exeunt, except for Parry.
The discontented desire to be alone. My wishes are made up, for they are gone. Here are no blabs but this, and this one clock I'll keep from going with a double lock. Yet it will strike. This day it must be done. What must be done? What must this engine do? A deed of treason hath prepared me to. These two, why, they had life by her, and shall these two kill their deliverer? The life that makes me rise. These, once my sin had forfeited, her mercy pardoned me. I had been eaten up with worms ere this, had not her mercy given a life to this. And yet these hands, if I perform my oath, must kill that life that gave a life to both. I obtained the sacrament to do it, conferred with Cardinal Como about it, and received full absolution from his holiness. Being satisfied by many holy fathers during my travels both in France and Italy, the deed is just and meritorious. And yet I am troubled when I do remember the excellency of her majesty, and I would fain desist, but that I know how many vows of mine are gone to heaven, my letters and my promises on earth, to holy fathers and grave Catholics, that I would do it for good of Catholics. Then, in the garden where this day she walks, her graces I will call behind my eyes, and by a subject's hand a sovereign dies.
Enter gentleman.
Clear the way, gentlemen, for the Queen. Master Dr. Parry.
Exit gentleman.
Oh, let me see a difference in this man before this queen that I am come to kill showed me the gracious eye of her respect and gave me countenance amongst greatest earls, this man was forwarder to thrust me forth than now he is humble to accept me in. If then her grace hath honored me so much, how can this hand give her a treacherous touch? Well, the trumpets speak. Heaven, what shall I do? Even what hell and my damned heart shall thrust me to.
Enter the Queen, Leicester and lords.
Fair day, my lords. You are all larks this morning. Up with the sun. You are stirring quite early.
We're all subjects to your sovereign's light.
That you call duty, we accept as love. And we do thank you. Nay, we thank you all. 'Tis not to one, but 'tis in general.
The queen would walk apart. Forbear, my lords.
Now, what makes me shake? Do angels guard her, or does heaven partake her refuge?
In such a garden may a sovereign be taught her loving subjects to maintain, each plant unto his nature and his worth, having full cherishing, it springeth forth. Weeds must be weeded out, yet weeded so, till they do hurt. Let them a God's name grow.
Now, Queen.
He offers to shoot.
Who's there? My kind friend, Master Dr. Parry.
My most dread sovereign.
Why do you tremble, Master Doctor? Have you any suit to us? Shake not at us, we do our subjects love. Or does thy face show signs of discontent? Through any heavy want oppresseth thee?
As she turns back, he offers to shoot, but returning, he withdraws his hand.
Though at our court of Greenwich thou wert crossed, ensuing to be master of St. Catherine's, to do thee good seek out a better place, she'll give thee that which hath given thee grace.
I know your love, dread Queen. Now,
Master Doctor, about the talk we had together of English fugitives that seek my life, you told me of them. I am beholding to you.
I did no more than duty. Oh, happy time.
And will they still persist? Do they desire my blood, that wake when I should sleep, to do them good?
Madam.
Oh, my maker, Parry, villain traitor, what dost thou with that dag?
Pardon, dread sovereign.
Pardon, thou villain, shows thou art a traitor. Treason! My lord's treason!
Re-enter lords.
Ha! By the blessed place of heaven, treason! And we so near! A traitor with a dag! God's holy mother! Lords, guard the queen! You're not frightened, madam. Pray the sergeant to arrest the wretch.
Be not so rash, good Leicester, he's dead already, struck with remorse of that he was to do. Pray let me speak with him. Say, Master Doctor, wherein have I deserved an ill of you, unless it were an ill in pardoning you? What have I done toward you to seek my life, unless it were in taking you to grace?
Mercy, dread Queen.
I thank my God I have mercy to remit a greater sin, if you repent for it. Arise.
My lords, what do you mean? Take hence that villain. Let her alone, she'll pardon him again. Good queen, we know you are too merciful to deal with traitors of this monstrous kind. Away with him to the tower, then to death. Traitor's death shall such a traitor have, that seeks his sovereign's life that did him save.
Good Leicester.
You must be ruled.
And they exit. So the Queen gets to be merciful, and the killing of traitors is outsourced to other members of the court. So yes, it's like hi history. Do you remember that thing? Sort of pops in with this interest. I mean, structurally, what is happening with Dr. Parry is it's behind you. The Queen turns away, pulls out the gun. She looks back. Oh no, nothing to see here. And that happens several times.
Yeah.
Though not primarily for laughs. I think that's fair to say. Just because it's structured that way doesn't automatically mean it's there for humour. But everybody knows Dr. Parry is dodgy. He's already been declared a traitor once and saved. Everybody's sort of bitching about him behind his back while he's in the room. And I'm not impressed with the security arrangements here. If you're just allowing him wandering around, should someone just have vaguely checked? He's got a gun. It's not even that he's got a knife or a sword or things that you sort of have. He's actually got a really dangerous offensive weapon. Lots of things about what this scene is doing. Let's stick with what the scene is doing for the moment, apart from going, morning. Oh, it's really early, isn't it? Oh, God. Mary always slept in, but Elizabeth, God, so early. Thoughts on the room? Who wants to leap in? Rachael.
Just a question. Was there like an abnormal amount of assassination attempts on Elizabeth, or did they just go further than other monarchs? Why is I don't know, why are scenes like this famous?
Without going too deeply into history, but I'll go to Lois initially there and then Alan.
Yeah, well, it's partly due to religion. I mean, when the Pope excommunicated Elizabeth, he also released her subjects from their allegiance to her, which meant that killing her could even be seen, as it is by Parry, as a meritorious deed, or at least that's how he's trying to convince himself. So a lot of these had to do with the desire to bring back the true religion, as opposed to the one that she was inculcating.
Yeah, I mean, basically, Elizabeth has her court has a good reason to be paranoid. There are a lot of people against them. Doesn't necessarily justify what the government over the years does, but they have a good call for paranoia. Alan, are you?
What Lois said. So move on.
Excellent. And yes, I just want to stick with what the scene is doing for the moment. We will dip into history a little further on. Eric.
It's interesting that you get this after all the laughs that we've had, because I mean it makes sense like structurally, because like obviously after having had the comedy tension like flow out, you've got this sort of input of information that is just like, I don't know, it sort of grounds you. Yeah.
Well, it's interesting what's happening structurally here, is that, we've had a very established sort of city comedy play that's been going on here. And now suddenly we have, we briefly met the Queen, who was really interacting with a city comedy. And then we have this scene, which is doing something very different, and is very isolated from much of what we've already had. Lois.
Yeah, it's interesting, though, because the previous scene ends with Hobson galloping off to try to save somebody from being executed. And then in this one, we've got, the possibility any minute that someone's going to shoot Elizabeth, although the audience obviously knows that this isn't going to happen. But it's made as suspenseful as possible, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very effective scene in its own self. I think there's something really nice going on here that's interesting. The Lords... the way the Lords talk, and then they go to Dr. Parry, why the long face? And he goes, no, it's just how I look. It's resting doctor face. That's just what I have. And then, of course, he goes to the audience, no, actually, I'm very sad. Aliki.
A couple of things. One, we've talked before about how many asides and overhearings and people sharing the stage while not sharing conceptual space there are in this play. And here's several such incidences in a row. And the other thing I wondered is whether Elizabeth is being compared to Hobson in her being too kind, too generous to everybody in the way that Hobson is throughout the play.
Elizabeth needs to learn to be more ruthless, of which that's I like. Lynn.
Well, maybe this is too much of a modern take on it, but Hobson and Gresham earlier in the play have been forgiving about property crime. Gresham was surprised to learn that Timothy had embezzled 500 pounds. It's like, oh, well, that's, who knew? And, oh, I forgive my nephew. He's such a wag. And Hobson saying, you know, I know you're good for it. I'm going to give you some more stuff to help you make money and get back on your feet. That's all about property. That Parry is a violent criminal. He attempted murder once and he attempted murder a second time. You know, mercy is good, but maybe in this case, society would be better served if Parry were removed from it.
Yeah. And as we're about to hit final thoughts around the room, but just to open the door a little on history, it's been, you know, that question about how historical this particular scene is. I'm aware of various plots and various things. I don't know necessarily about this incident as to whether this is a single person or a conflation of various attempts or what this is doing here. I don't know if anyone in the room has any data on that they wanted to throw in at this late stage. It's not ringing any bells for anyone, really, is it? Helen, you're muted at the moment if you've got anything, but it doesn't look like you do.
No, I haven't. I dare say I could go and have a look, but I don't. It seems to be fairly typical of what was assumed to be the position of the various would-be assassins of Elizabeth. I mean, it isn't in any way unbelievable, but on the other hand, I would be reluctant to put a finger on it because I just don't know about Dr. Parry, but I'll find out for next time.
Yeah, because we've got quite a lot of time in lieu to next time for sort of unpacking, because we have some textual variations to look at next time as well, because we are actually much closer to the end of the play in real terms than you'd think. So that's the other thing to think about it. We're nearly there. So as we go into final thoughts and I go around the room, that sense of, you know, we've got slightly too much material for a comfortably length stage play. So if we're putting it on stage, we can start saying, well, what if we were shaping this text? What might we trim out? Is that just salami cuts of here and there, or are we talking about minor plot lines that we want to iron or do things with? But also we've got other mediums where we could use all the material in its fullest extent, and things we might maybe tweak to make the dramaturgy flow better. You know, it is just that thing when you get a long play, more interference becomes necessary than with a short play where you can just say, hey, let's just let the thing flow and see how it goes. So final thoughts around the room. Eric, any final thoughts?
I actually had the question, but
go for it.
Yeah, no, I was just wondering if this play was staged around the time of the plot against King James, because that would be very interesting. And it's very, yeah, it's kind of like, yeah, you don't want to talk about it. But monarchs do face this. Maybe he's kind of trying to humanize James rather than Elizabeth. I don't know, this context is interesting. And yeah, that's just me. And I don't know, final thoughts, there's a part of me going, it's got less uncomfortable stuff than Golden Age did. It's more of a data dump that probably would be the issue. But like, you know, all the Lord Mayor's stuff that we kind of talked about yesterday and the day before. And yeah, it's just kind of, I don't know how, there's a part of me going, it's all very interesting and I just want to keep it all in, but I'm like, can we do that? Is that allowed?
Yeah, what is, if you know, because a modern audience, we tend to want things to be tidier, which is not necessarily fair on an early modern play because they're not always tidy, and sometimes that's actually their great strength.
But it's all very world building, like sort of like if this were a film, we wouldn't have a problem with it doing that because it's sort of, you know, fodder. It's like, you know, we know what it's doing.
Lois, any final thoughts?
Yeah, I was thinking of the same thing actually that Eric was saying if this were a film, because it seemed to me it was rather like some of those TV series. There was a whole series on Henry VIII and a whole series on Elizabeth. And if it were done like that episodically, I think it would work extremely well. I mean, people would put up with all of this because they would see it as, information quite effectively dramatized. I mean, obviously it could be cut. I mean, I was thinking that the whole business about the Ramseys, for example, that just seems to be a story about how Ramsey, who is a good man, nevertheless keeps saying he doesn't have any money to give people, but finally on his deathbed, he's going to do something. And the trouble is, if you cut him, you cut his wife, who was also an important benefactor. And I think that's probably got to be kept in a way, just as to balance the other benefactors. But there are things like that could be removed. And then maybe, I don't know, maybe there's one too many practical joke played by John, but on the whole, I kind of like the whole thing myself. I find just some of it just interesting, bookkeeping in this 16th century, stuff like that.
I mean, we have the advantage that we can do episodic very effectively, if we're looking at this in a podcast or video sense, and then we can frame. We could find ways of framing individual. It's less episodic than, in a sense, than some other Heywoods that we've done, where you feel like here is a unit of action. Now it ended, so now we move on to the next one. Whereas this, there's a lot more overlap, where a character who pops up at the beginning and then pops, and we get a life cycle. So it's an interesting way that material might be used. Aliki, any final thoughts?
I'm just a Hobson fangirl now. I want everything to revolve around him.
I do have some bad news. If you look on your team sheets for Who's Called Tomorrow, there is no Hobson.
Really? I mean, we don't even see him rescue that guy from the gallows? Oh, no.
No, that's it for Hobson.
Oh. Hope somebody at least comes in and says,
I genuinely I was scanning ahead to see, and I haven't actually managed to locate anything, but Helen might be able to tell us more. But not to spoil for tomorrow, but the information has already gone to the room that there is no more Hobson, unless there's a name change, and he's been given a noble rank, and he's just hidden in the dramatis personae. Because I want a resolution to that, because now I'm looking at the sort of city angle. I'm really interested in, okay, can we tie that into a neat bow, and actually do we quietly jettison the Queen apart from opening the exchange? Because that feels quite dramatically satisfying, whereas what we've just had here, it's a good scene, not sure we've got the play to hold it. I feel like the play should have ended with this royal exchange. Open the royal exchange, ding ding. Let's all have dinner.
That's pretty much how Shoemaker's Holiday ends. I mean, they give the name to the Leadenhall, isn't it? I mean, the king actually names Leadenhall, and then they go all off to enjoy food and drink. Yeah.
So, all sorts of questions which we'll be able to answer better tomorrow. But, thought I'd flag that up just to make everyone sad. Alan, any final thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, it is unfocused as a piece, I think. And I think it would probably, if they did a television adaptation, it would probably stretch across at least 4 sessions. By the time they allowed time for costumes and location shots and all the rest of it. Quite what the main drift of the darn thing ought to be is a moot point, because there's at least 3 vaguely interlocking plots going on, and then you've got this sort of side stuff about the Queen which we've just gone through, which doesn't really seem to connect with the rest of it at this time.
But at least with the title makes sense, so that's always nice. Lynn, any final thoughts?
Yeah, am I on? Is this thing on?
Yes.
The episodicness, and I'm not even sure that's the right term, is not, kind of doesn't bother me, because so many of the scenes are entertaining and have a nice little arc in themselves, that there's sort of a satisfying little story scene by scene. So the fact that there doesn't seem to be an overall narrative arc is not, it's not bothering me. I am troubled by some of the values that the text seems to be supporting. What Aliki yesterday called capitalistic triumphalism, and the sort of the contention, or at least the idea, that the answer to income inequality and the existence of poverty is voluntary charity. Those are contentions that we've been told since this period, evidently, and centuries later, Dickens was very much into that moral, that if you're successful and you're lucky, it's your obligation to help the less fortunate and lift them up. That's the answer to the troubles in society. And I am just not somebody who thinks that that's the answer. And I think we need to stop promoting that narrative. So from my political point of view, that's what's really problematic about the text.
Rachael, final thoughts?
About the capitalism thing, like, I mean, because it's still like a economic system that, internationally we work under, and I wonder if, it's more a wondering about like how there's things in this, when I ask about the history so much, that there's so many things that changed and seem constraining if moving forward for people that, and there's questions about that system, because I think even in this play, there's questions about this system that, people will look back on that in a certain way that maybe we look on, I don't know, some things from this era as being archaic. I'm not exactly sure what I'm saying, but I mean, it's a system that still exists, and it's not like we can opt out of it any more than those people could opt out of it, even if they were doing, starting trades and, starting whole things that we still are unwinding today, if that makes sense. I don't know. I think this is, I'm getting too serious with this. The city comedy angle, I think is nice. It reminds me kind of like that Ethan Hawke and Winona Ryder movie where they're just out of college and he's got like 7 different jobs or something and running all over the place, that you could, the comedy characters in Hobson's shop are interesting and very relatable for in the same way that the Parnassus plays are kind of like your first grown-up job, that it's like his shop is like your first part-time job at like a Macy's, or like, what do you guys have over there, like a Woolworth, or is that a grocery shop?
No, not anymore, no.
Went bust about 10 years ago.
It's a little longer than that now.
Tesco.
Yeah, Tesco. I think, because we're looking at a time, obviously, before, in fact, a time when the existing welfare state, as far as it existed, had been dismantled. Actually, if we could call the church before the Reformation effectively being a early form of welfare state, and this play does depict people at the top of the tree going, well, what do we do about this if the state isn't doing anything? Well. So within the context of the play, it's more complicated. It's a complicated political place, and it is full of stuff to criticise. It's full of stuff that on an individual character level we can run with, and it's whether that a production can let all of those things hover and land in a way, because it could, bits of it feel satirical and critical, as well as also romanticising at other times. So I think it's a really good thing to flag up, but I don't think it's an insuperable problem. I just think it's something that we need to find a route through, and I'm not sure if you found that. I don't know if Leaky wanted to come back on any of those points. There was some sort out from the chat that was coming. I didn't know if you wanted to leap back in. You're muted at the moment, so I don't know if you have.
I just don't think it's particularly relevant what we make of it politically. I don't like Christianity either, or the monarchy, but this is a play in part about a Protestant monarch. it's, I don't know. I don't find the political question of, whatever. I'm sorry. No, I don't think I have anything to say.
Lynn, did you want to come back? You're muted at this moment, Lynn. Lynn?
So I mean that's a good point, that there are a lot of values that early modern plays take for granted that we have let go of. We don't so much really believe in monarchy, certainly not in absolute monarchy anymore. The whole contention between Protestantism and Catholicism is something we have some distance from. We're a much more secular society. But my concern is the myth of private charity being the answer to economic equality is still being valorized and promoted. We don't have that kind of historical distance from that. We're still like, oh, look at all the good that the Gates Foundation has done, or whatever. Isn't that admirable that these people who are obscenely wealthy are endowing museums?
But this play is not being used to attack the welfare state. I think you're being very anachronistic to see it that way.
Yeah, I realize that, but I think that the modern connection is there in a way that the connection with believing in the divine right of kings and believing that the conflict between Catholicism and Protestantism is, basically about the fate of the human soul. I don't think we have that distance. I don't think we have that luxury to say, it's historical.
But you don't think that the theology is that relevant to contemporary politics. I'm afraid I rather think it is.
It depends on your.
I'm going to move us on a little bit. Lois, did you have a follow-up?
Well, I mean, what I was thinking was just that the depiction of private charity in this play is so extravagant in a way. I mean, the way people are using their money is not really 20th century. The Gresham's behavior in the yesterday's version of this. And then on the other hand, the little bits of niceness, I mean, like standing up to be the witness for somebody who doesn't have a witness at their child's baptism. This is still the kind of thing that's kind of moving, because it's a sort of private kindness that we presumably don't want to rule out on the grounds that the government should be doing it. So, I mean, I think that people are bound to think of some of the play in modern terms, but I think it's so clearly it belongs to a particular period, and it's just really interesting as a depiction of some things about that period. I also think Heywood is really pretty subtle. I mean, he seems to me to be looking at this thing from a number of different angles. Things are funny, but they're not just funny,
Yeah, I mean, there were bits from yesterday when this extravagant wealth being lost, where I sort of felt when he's drinking the pearl, where you're just going, it's like they've just picked up a load of banknotes and just set fire to them. Where again, the question of how that plays and how that is played and what that is saying. I think that there are a lot of questions about what a production brings to this text. In the context of where you perform it, I think it's a really good point to flag up, even if we don't necessarily agree on the answer. Helen, very belated final thoughts.
Well, I mean, from the historical point of view, this play is really, really interesting. I mean, there's so much in it. It's so rich. It is disjointed, and yes, none of us would necessarily say, let us adopt the mores of that time and dump them on ours, because things don't work that way. But I mean, it's a play that I really love now. To answer Eric's point about when it was performed, how would the assassination attempt resonate? I think, from what I understand about its performance, that it was written and performed before the gunpowder treason. So Catesby's plot, which for some reason is ascribed to Fawkes, I've never worked out why, is well in the future.
Okay, that makes sense. But
1605. November the 5th, was it?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes.
I think you should remember that. You should
Oh,
remember.
should I?
Remember.
Yes, well, I always remember it was 1605, but the exact date and month does escape me. But the I mean, the assassination that I think of is always William of Orange, who was assassinated in the early 1580s. Was it 84? Sometime like that. The man who did it, Balthazar Gerard, was taken and I think practically pulled apart by the mob, but he was certainly executed quite horribly. But his family were then given sums of money and a pension by the Catholic Church as a reward for having for their family member having assassinated a head of state. Well, he wasn't quite a head of state, but as near as makes no odds. So yeah, I mean, this is real.
Yeah.
And that's one of the problems with nature of this script as well, is that yes, its birth would have been perhaps pre gunpowder, but it's hinterland after that, and its rewriting that probably happened along the way over the next few decades means that it may also contain that, even if its nucleus didn't. So we can't be absolutely certain as to what it's responding to. It's a really interesting. Maybe that that comes out of that sort of initial period when it's not Elizabeth, when that sense of, oh, we can write about assassination plots because it's maybe that's gone a little bit distant, and then bam, oh, maybe it isn't. And all sorts of interesting questions about how art adjusts to that kind of trauma, which maybe we'll get to a little later on as our general sort of arrow of time gets closer and closer to 1605. Generally, we still have quite a few bits to fill in before then. We've still got the late 1590s and the early 1600s to do a lot of infill, but we're getting there. We're getting there, and then it's 17th century all the way. Anyway, all that remains is to thank all these wonderful readers for all their wonderful reading. Thank you very much, everyone, and goodbye.
Bye.
Knowest thou not me, Queen? Then thou knowest nobody.